When I was 6, I got my very first video game for Christmas, Spongebob Battle for Bikini Bottom. I love this game. I loved it when I first got it at 6 years old, and I still love it now at 20 years old. And so for this video, I just want to go back and explore this game and why it is still one of my favorites I've ever played. When you first launch the game, you are greeted by our yellow and porous friend, SpongeBob SquarePants. This whole launch and startup of the game is so nostalgic for me. For whatever reason, the logos that pop up when the game is actually starting, like the Nick Games logo and the THQ logo made of bubbles, and there's like jellyfish around it, that part for me is one of the most nostalgic parts of the game. I don't know, it just reminds me of starting up the game as a kid and just being really excited to play the game. But anyway, we're not here to just talk about logos. Let's actually get into the game. Once you make a new save file, you are shown a cutscene. Basically, in this cutscene, we see Plankton making a robot army at the Chum Bucket because, of course, him being Plankton, he's trying to take over Bikini Bottom again. He has this machine that duplicates all the robots called the Duplicatotron 3000, and for whatever reason, he decided to make a switch that says for the robots to either obey him or don't obey him. And of course, it was left on don't obey. What's even the point of making that on your machine anyway? Why would you do that? But basically, because of all this, the robots go rogue and they take over the Bikini Bottom. And when all this is happening, we cut to our favorite oceanic duo, SpongeBob and Patrick, hanging out at SpongeBob's house talking about the special conch shell that Patrick calls my magic wishing shell, which Patrick believes can multiply whatever is put in it the next morning. But this little segment is really great because it just feels like classic SpongeBob. It's able to capture that vibe of the first few seasons with them being more chill and just hanging out. The cutscene is only 2 minutes long, but it's able to draw you in with the familiar and nostalgic feeling you get from the show. Once this cutscene ends, you get thrown straight into the gameplay. Starting off in SpongeBob's house, which has been completely trashed by robots, is where you get a feel for the controls and special moves that SpongeBob has. You also get introduced to the collectibles, health system, and the item that you need to progress through the game, the Golden Spatula. It's basically this game's version of a Super Mario 64 Power Star. You start with 3 attacks as SpongeBob: a Bubble Spin, which is just a swing attack, a Bubble Bash, ground pound, and the Bubble Bounce, which is a headbutt. Later on in the game, you unlock 2 more attacks, but I'll get into those later. Your first task is to test out these abilities by going to the different rooms around SpongeBob's house, like the kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, and finally, his massive library, which is so massive, I'm pretty sure it's bigger than his house. It just doesn't make any sense. But once you get through the house and collect 50 shiny objects, you get your first golden spatula. And then you can finally start the game. Once you leave SpongeBob's humble abode, we are greeted by the villain himself, Plankton.
Go away, SpongeBob.
Plankton is just there to convince SpongeBob to do the dirty work for him by deactivating all the robots. Plankton basically just tells SpongeBob that the robots bent all of his beloved spoons for sympathy points. And of course, SpongeBob, being the most gullible character of all time, decides to help Plankton and go and destroy all the robots just like he's asking.
They even bent all my spoons. I love those spoons like they were my children.
That's terrible.
But there are other iconic characters you also can talk to, just scattered around, like Bubble Buddy, Squidward, who we can bully by destroying everything in his house, Patrick, and Mr. Krabs. Patrick and Mr. Krabs have ways to get multiple golden spatulas from them. For Patrick, you have to find and return his lost socks.
Wow, SpongeBob, you found some!
And for Mr. Krabs, you can buy them from him with shiny objects. Just ignore his voice. We don't talk about that.
Ooh, you had me worried there for a bit, boy. Worried for me money, of course.
But let's get into the main part of the game, starting off with the level selection. Each level you play through is based off of an iconic place in the show, like downtown Bikini Bottom, Goo Lagoon, and even the Flying Dutchman's Graveyard. Jellyfish Fields is the first level you enter, complete with green grass, a waterfall, a giant jellyfish-shaped rock, and Squidward being nearly stung to death. This is where you begin to really get the feel of the game, like destroying tikis for shiny objects, avoiding and destroying robots, jumping on big coral trees, and, other SpongeBob activities. There are other obstacles in this area, like a bridge you have to rebuild, there's a cannon that shoots out pufferfish, and the goo that SpongeBob doesn't know how to swim in. And as you keep progressing through this level, you find more obstacles and more puzzles that are different than the last. And it's like this for pretty much every level. They did a really good job keeping the game exciting and really not that repetitive at all. There are 9 main levels in the game. The map with all these levels is split into 3 parts, with Jellyfish Fields, Downtown Bikini Bottom, and Goo Lagoon being in the first section. The second section has Sandy Shoals, which has the Mermalator underneath it, Rock Bottom, and Sand Mountain. And the third section has Kelp Forest, SpongeBob's Dream, and the Flying Dutchman's Graveyard. Each of these sections are separated by a boss you have to defeat in order to reach the next one, with Robot Sandy being the first one, Robot Patrick being the second one, and Robot Spongebob is the final boss to beat the game. These are really simple with no real challenge behind them, but they're just fun, and they incorporate certain things from the areas before each boss. For example, in the Sandy fight, you throw her head into a Jumbotron, which is something you learn to do in Jellyfish Fields by throwing Watermelon as Patrick. And in the Patrick fight, you use the Bubble Bowl ability, which you unlock in that area. These bosses remind me a lot of a Super Mario Galaxy boss in the way that they aren't difficult, like at all, but the gimmicks to them are so entertaining that it just doesn't really matter. And it's not just the boss fights that are like this, but entire levels. There are really fun and unique gameplay mechanics throughout the entire game. Things like bungee jumping, where you connect a fishing hook to your underpants and you have to dive down and collect a bunch of little things like golden spatulas or shiny objects. There's the sponge ball, which is available in certain areas, and basically all it does is allows you to roll around really fast, and you can gain momentum and jump over high things or far gaps or whatever. I want to mention with the sponge ball that at the end of the game, there's this bonus arena where you basically could just do stunts with the sponge ball for as long as you want. It's pretty cool. There's wall jumping, which is a pretty standard thing in a 3D platformer. Sledding, which is really fun. You go really fast and just destroy a bunch of tikis while it plays a great song. Patrick rides on his back. Sandy actually has a shell to ride on. And SpongeBob uses his tongue, which is pretty awesome. And there's this one specific thing in Kelp Forest that I always am reminded of, and it's this stupid slapping plant. It's literally just a plant that slaps you if you get too close to it, and it really used to bother me as a kid because I thought I had to kill it, but it's literally impossible to, so that really frustrated me. Anyway, I'm moving on. And the other thing that SpongeBob unlocks that I haven't mentioned yet is this ability to send bubble airstrikes. That's a little bit extreme. While some levels are more basic, like Jellyfish Fields, there are some kind of insane levels like the Mermalator and SpongeBob's Dream because of how much more complex they are. Like, SpongeBob's Dream is massive. It basically is a level with extra levels inside it because you go to the dreams of different characters inside SpongeBob's Dream. I'm not really sure how that works, but oh well. But when you enter SpongeBob's Dream, you're inside a giant pineapple. At least I think it's a pineapple because it has like wallpaper. Whatever it is, I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be his house. There are giant characters that are floating above their houses, and there's Krabby Patties and a bunch of spiked platforms that move around, rotate, flip, all that crazy stuff. And somehow robots are actually in his dream. I guess that makes sense because he is thinking about it a lot, having to fight them. But the different dreams in this level are really cool. The first one you enter is Sandy's Dream, which is obviously going to be Texas theme. Basically, there's just this really long slide that goes through the whole thing. There's cows that throw pies at you for some reason. And the main objective is to get the golden spatula, which is on top of a giant acorn. That is so cool. The next one is Squidward's Dream, where you jump on different instruments and music notes, and you try to get to the end where there's a giant Squidward head playing the clarinet. And when I was a kid, this was the hardest part of the game by far. I don't know what it was. It might have just been because of how spread out the jumps are and how much the platforms move and stuff, but it was really hard for me. I don't know why. And then after that, we go to Mr. Krabs' Dream, which is a massive grill with like money and Krabby Patties floating around it. And basically all you have to do here is just eliminate all the robots in the room, and then you move on to the next one. The last dream you go to is Patrick's Dream. This is by far the most complex area in the entire game. I cannot stress this enough. It is the most detailed, crazy gameplay in the entire thing. Just look at this. Also, I mentioned the Mermalator because that level has so much you can do. The main objective is to shut down a supercomputer, which is at the end of the level, but you need to uncover the button that shuts it off by finding a different button at the end of a certain section. But also in this level, there's an area where you have to push 3 buttons as Patrick. These buttons are guarded by different obstacles, and when you do hit all 3 before the time runs out, Mermaid Man gives you a golden spatula. There's also this puzzle that Barnacle Boy has you do, which is one of the most annoying things in the game because it's this puzzle where you try to have these things point towards you and they're all next to each other. And when you hit one button, it rotates the ones on the sides of the one that you're hitting. Does that make any sense? Well, I guess there's video footage of it in the background, so maybe you'll see what I'm talking about. It was so hard for me. I could not, for the life of me, do this as a kid. It took me forever to actually be able to come back and beat this stupid puzzle.
Just start turning those cylinders.
In this level, there's even a boss fight that is pretty simple, but it's also pretty fun. And finally, this level has one of the most difficult and annoying things to do in this game. You're supposed to get this giant ball to the end of this really long obstacle course, and you have to time hitting things a certain way and tilting platforms in order to prevent it from falling. Because if it falls, you have to try again from the beginning. I think almost everyone that's played this game knows how annoying the ballroom is. You have to time everything perfectly and tilt this platform thing at the end perfectly as well to finally get it onto a little platform that gives a timer to try to hit a button with the bubbleable ability between the blades of a spinning propeller. And if you fail to do it in time, you have to start from the beginning. Anyway, let's move on. Some of the main objectives for levels are kind of ridiculous concepts. In order to complete the Goo Lagoon level, you have to destroy a robot that stole everyone's sunscreen by focusing a beam of light from the sun at it. And in Rock Bottom, you gotta return all of the art from the local museum, which I didn't even know Rock Bottom had an art museum. I guess we know that now. One of my favorite areas in any level in this game is the lighthouse section in downtown Bikini Bottom. Basically, when you go in, you have to defeat waves of enemies on this like rotating floor, and every time you beat a wave, the floor breaks and you fall down to the next floor. For some reason, the floor breaking was like the coolest thing to me as a kid. I don't know why, but it is still a pretty fun area to go to. But really, the amount of things I could do in this game blew my mind as a kid, and it's definitely still impressive today. In this game, you can play as 3 different characters: Spongebob, Patrick, and Sandy. Each of these characters have unique abilities that are needed at different times. Like Patrick can pick up and throw items if you need to hit a button far away or need to climb to a high ledge. And Sandy can use her rope to lasso enemies from a distance and to glide and grapple to different areas. You can tell when you need to play as a different character because there's these bus stops around, which is where you actually switch characters. While they don't add too much difference to the way you play the game, they definitely add to the experience. But of course, with great characters you can play as, you need great enemies to fight against. For whatever reason, the robots in this game have always been one of my favorite things in any game I've ever played. They are pretty unique, and you are introduced to different kinds as you play through new levels. There are a total of 14 robots in this game, so I'm just going to speed right through these. Fodder is the Goomba of this game. He's the most simple and is the first robot you encounter. Hammer tries to hit you with a hammer made of ham. Tartar shoots tartar sauce at you, and he also takes 2 hits to destroy him. Chompbot is a little dog-like robot that either tries to bite you or hit you with poisonous gas. G-Love, or Glove, one of those, I'm not really sure, has a bunch of hands and slowly moves towards you while spinning to try to slap you. Chuck is a flying robot that launches torpedoes at you that splash water, somehow, even though they're already underwater. Monsoon is this absolute nerd that has the ability to summon storm clouds that strike lightning. Bomba is a little guy that comes up to you and explodes. Sleepy Time has an area around him that you have to sneak through, because if he wakes up, he zaps you. He's probably my favorite robot in the game. Arf is a cowboy robot that spawns in little dog things called Arfbots that explode. He takes 3 hits and floats around after being hit. The Bzbot has a laser that starts off green that doesn't do any damage, but will turn yellow after a bit, and then it starts actually damaging you. So it's like a guardian from Minecraft. Tubelets are 3 robots with propeller hats in floaties that are stacked on top of each other. One shoots out fire, and the other 2 don't really do much. If you hit one and don't hit all of them in time, it explodes and respawns the ones you hit. And finally, Slick is a robot that blows bubbles made of oil that is either a shield for him or a projectile that turns into a slippery puddle. And he's probably the most annoying robot to go against. But these robots are really fun to fight, and I love their designs. So much so that I actually used to draw these guys when I was a kid. Yeah, these are really bad. Also, I still have the original game in its case. If we look at the back of this, here's robot Sandy. Here's Patrick hitting that guy. Normal Sandy. SpongeBob in the middle, and we got crazy wacky SpongeBob over here. Plus, I still have the original booklet, which is pretty cool. Plankton is scheming like always. So we got Patrick and Squidward. It shows the different characters you play as and the items that you collect, like the golden spatula, shiny objects, SpongeBall. You can see the tikis that you destroy. It even shows all the levels to you, except for the Chum Bucket Lab. That's supposed to be a secret. Oh, SpongeBob, soak up the adventures. Oh, hey, Jimmy Neutron. There's one more thing I want to mention about this game, and it's the music. It's just really good. It's always matching the vibe of where you are and what you're doing. One of the best songs in this game is the one that plays in the Poseidome when you're fighting Robot Sandy. When I was re-listening to the soundtrack, I was kind of surprised by how good this song is. A situational song is the big fight slash mini boss song. It just plays whenever you're fighting waves of robots fighting a mini boss, like what the name says. And this song legit sounds like a robot, or at least fighting robots. It just sounds robotic. Another great song is the Mermalayer theme song. It's supposed to replicate the sound of a superhero's theme song, since it's for Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy's Mermalayer. And it's just done perfectly, because now it sounds like a classic superhero show or movie mixed in with these segments that sound like you're fighting and all that. But the music in Battle for Bikini Bottom is really, really good. Every song fits the vibe of the area or the situation that you're in. It's just produced really well, and I still listen to some of the OST from time to time. Battle for Bikini Bottom is an easy game, but that's okay, because the focus isn't difficulty. Instead, it's about fun and memorable moments throughout the entire game. Instead of remembering how many times I died on a certain jump, I remember the crazy areas in SpongeBob's dream. I'm not going to feel nostalgic for being killed by a robot that shoots fire. I'm going to feel nostalgic for being slapped by a super annoying plant. And really, that's why I love this game so much, because of how it's focused on giving the player a simply fun experience that is creative and memorable. This game is childish, and that is definitely a good thing, because it doesn't need to be a specific difficulty. It could just be a game that perfectly captures the vibe of SpongeBob. Battle for Bikini Bottom will always be a game that was a staple in my childhood, and I'm so glad that they made a remake for it, because now more people can enjoy it and hopefully feel as nostalgic for it as I do. Alright, and there you have it. It was really nice looking back at this game and just writing about it, because it's been a really long time since I've actually played the original. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you feel like it. It would be really helpful, and I'm almost to 1,000 subscribers. And if we could hit that, that would be really, really cool. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.